An investigation into leaked classified Israeli military data reveals that 5 out of 6 Palestinians killed in Gaza were civilians, not fighters. It's one of the highest death rates recorded in modern warfare. What more do these figures tell us? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. An investigation using leaked classified Israeli military data shows that Israel is killing civilians in Gaza at a rate rarely seen in modern warfare. Analysis of the secret intelligence was carried out by Israeli media outlets Plus 972 and Local Call, as well as the UK's Guardian newspaper. They found more than 80% of the Palestinians killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza were civilians. The findings are in sharp contrast to the official Israeli position regularly stated by the government, military and embassy representatives worldwide that it doesn't intentionally target innocents. Researchers say the percentage of non-combatants killed in Gaza is higher than in most modern conflicts, including in Sudan and Syria. Rights organizations say the findings are further evidence of Israel's genocide in Gaza. We'll look into the investigation's findings and their significance with our guests in just a moment. But first, a report from Victoria Gatenby.
Emergency workers pull the dead and injured from the rubble after an Israeli airstrike on Al-Nusayrat refugee camp. More than 62,000 people have been killed in Gaza since October 2023, excluding the thousands of missing presumed dead. These latest victims add to the mounting evidence that ordinary people, not armed groups, are bearing the brunt of Israel's war. A leaked classified Israeli military database shows 83% of Palestinians killed until May this year were civilians. The findings are part of a joint investigation by British and Israeli journalists. It shows 5 out of 6 Palestinians killed by Israeli forces in Gaza were civilians, which the report says is unprecedented in modern warfare. The Israeli military listed at least 8,900 fighters from Hamas and Islamic Jihad as dead or probably dead as of May. In the same period, Gaza health authorities recorded at least 53,000 Palestinians killed in Israeli attacks. That means the fighters accounted for just 17% of those killed.
We need to be aware of the fact that the 17% of the non-civilians includes also Anas Sharif and his 4 colleagues. So we should be very careful in looking into this number. More in general, among the 60, we often hear that 62,000 Palestinians have been killed, but these are just those that have been identified. So those that have been vaporized by bombs, decomposing bodies under the rubble, those that have been eaten by dogs, and there are also videos about that. These were never counted.
The ratio of civilians to fighters among the dead is extremely high compared with other conflicts like Syria and Sudan. Rights groups say the findings further support accusations that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. And they warn Israel's intensifying attacks on Gaza City will drive the civilian death toll even higher. Victoria Gatenby, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Tel Aviv is Gideon Levy, a columnist at the leading English-language newspaper in Israel, Haaretz. In Tunis is Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories. And in Chicago is Omar Shakir, the Director of Israel and Palestine at Human Rights Watch. A warm welcome to you all. Francesca, I'm going to start with you. What's your reaction to these figures? Does the database show that Israel is deliberately targeting civilians? These are official figures. The statistics speak for themselves. There's no doubt here. Israel knows what it's doing, and yet it continues to do it.
Are you asking me if I'm surprised? Of course not. I mean, I'm among the independent experts of the United Nations who has denounced that since October 2023, and I've produced a report providing significant evidence or relying on official data in March 2024 and October 2024, denouncing that Israel had killed 70% among the people killed in Gaza, 70% were women and children. And my argument was we cannot expect that all the other 30% are made of combatants. In fact, this confirms very much what I had analyzed during the course of my nearly 2 years documenting and reporting on the Israeli assault in Gaza. Israel knows exactly what it's doing. This is why there is no possibility to defend Israel from the accusations of genocide, which is the intentional destruction of a group as such.
So you think that this data set adds to the allegations that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza?
Yeah, Israel is committing genocide, and the amount of evidence and also the amount of solid scholarly and expert analysis is monumental. It's just about time that judicial bodies start seriously investigating the culprits, the individuals who are behind it. And there are plenty, because genocide is a particular crime under international law, and it's the intentional destruction of a group as such that can be carried out through killings, infliction of severe bodily and mental harm, the creation of conditions of life calculated to destroy through measures intended to prevent birth and transfer of children. At least 4 of these acts have been documented by United Nations affiliated bodies, including myself. I've documented 3 acts of genocide of the following. So the point is not how conclusive this is, it's why it's not stopping. Because even if it was just a collection of war crimes, Israel has destroyed Gaza. And today it's starving people as in a way that it's of an unprecedented sadism under the world eyes. And it's 2025, it's not 1925. So it's really shocking what we are seeing.
Okay, we'll bring in Gideon and Omar in just a moment. But first, earlier we spoke to Meron Rapporteur, the editor of the Israeli news site Local Call, which helped to carry out the investigation. He told us how the findings have been received in Israel.
The Israeli, Hasbara, people responsible for making Israel's image good in the world, were quite touched by this report, because it undermines the claim that Israel is the most moral army in the world, that the ratio is 1-to-1, as Prime Minister Netanyahu claimed. And they are trying to discredit what we have published, but they don't really discredit the numbers that we have, meaning that this is the database on which the Israeli army counts. This database includes more than 47 people in Gaza registered as belonging to the military wings of Hamas and Jihad. Of course, this is a very, very high number, 47,000 people, and it must include people who are not really in fighting.
Let's bring in Gideon Levy then. Gideon, I'm sure you'll agree that it was a remarkable feat of journalism getting access to this database. The Israeli army initially responded to the figures back in July that didn't dispute the findings, but when the Guardian newspaper followed up a few weeks later, the army said that it wanted to rephrase its response and rejected the findings. What do you make of that?
First of all, Adrian, let me just correct. So Haaretz is not an English-speaking newspaper. It is a Hebrew newspaper which appears also in English. It's important for me to emphasize this, because Haaretz talks, first of all, to the Israelis. Now to your question. They are trying to cover it up from the first day. And I was surprised that they confirmed it first, and then obviously they regretted like they are, by the way, denying the starvation and the famine in Gaza right now, with another report. This is pathetic because, as Francesca rightly said just a few minutes ago, those evidences are very important, but anyone who follows what's going on in Gaza cannot be surprised. And anyone who is not surprised cannot claim anymore that it is not genocide, because you see the intent from the beginning. The Israeli chief of staff of the Israeli army left on the 7th of October his home and told his wife, so did the wife tell us, Gaza is going to be destroyed, totally destroyed. This is what he said on the 7th of October. The head of the intelligence said recently that 50 Palestinians will be killed on each Israeli who was killed on the 7th of October. So there was an intention to commit a mass killing and to make Gaza unlivable. We see it in a more intensive way in recent weeks, in which they are killing dozens of people on a daily basis, even not trying to claim that they are involved somehow in the fighting. They are all starving people who stand in lines or just killed for God knows what purpose. So the evidences are very convincing, but also without the evidence, if someone follows the development of this war, you cannot get to any other conclusion but genocide, because there is no other name to call it.
Omar, what are your thoughts on that? What does the existence of this database tell us about what the Israeli army knows and what it and Israeli politicians are saying about the casualty numbers publicly?
Look, I think this report is vital because for 22 plus months, every single day, besides these short ceasefires, we hear reports of bombing after bombing, relentless bombardment, women, children, other civilians being killed. And because Israel blocks investigators, blocks foreign journalists, systematically kills Palestinian journalists, including journalists with Al Jazeera, we get so little information about who's actually being killed in these strikes. The Israeli government claims that they killed Hamas and other combatants, but yet no one is really able in many cases to get to the bottom of this. But this report adds to the mounting evidence that the Israeli government continues to kill tens of thousands of civilians, to do so every single day, to launch strikes knowing full well that more than likely the overwhelming majority of those killed will be civilians. And I think this report is critical because it goes to the very Israel's own data. And remember, Israel's concept of what is a combatant is elastic. They have described members of the local governing authority in Gaza as combatants, police officers, those securing aid convoys, those merely affiliated or linked to Hamas members. I could go on and on and on. So if you even acknowledge that this data probably doesn't even tell you the story of how awful this is, because it's including Israel's own definition of combatants, which, newsflash, doesn't match international law. So this again adds to the overwhelming evidence of Israel's utter disregard for civilian life and its systematic effort to create conditions on the ground to destroy the Palestinian people in part or in whole, which of course is at the very heart of the crime of genocide. And the Israeli government continues to commit every day ongoing acts of genocide and other war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Francesca, so this database confirms disproportionate numbers of civilian casualties. What moral obligations does that place on the Israeli government, Israel's allies, particularly the US, and the international justice system? How might this data shape investigations by the International Criminal Court and the UN?
Yeah. I feel more comfortable commenting what are the legal obligations, because it seems to me that in general, the leadership, political leadership around the world is lacking any sense of morality. And this is something that pierces my heart. It's not something that I say lightheartedly. But the legal obligations are first and foremost on Israel to stop acts of genocide. Israel was put on notice by the International Court of Justice on the 24th of January 2024, when the court recognized the plausibility of risk of irreparable harm under the Genocide Convention against the Palestinians in Gaza. And so notice was also put to the international community, which should have stopped at least at a minimum arms transfer and arms deals with Israel. So we have seen a total collapse of the sense of abidance by international law in international community. Multilateralism has been critically hit because of the stance not just of Israel but also the United States, and which has always offered cover for Israel. This is not new, but it has never endorsed publicly the forcible displacement of the Palestinians as part of its foreign policy, as it has happened with the arrival of the new Trump administration. And in the face of this, there is an attempt by member states, primarily in the global south, led by Colombia and South Africa. You might have heard of the Hague Group, who have started taking concrete steps regarding prohibition of arms transfers and other, giving deals with Israel and accountability. But it's really little, because the majority of the countries, especially in the West, but also some countries in the Arab region, are not contributing enough to stop this genocide, which will stop once Israel is deprived of the means to continue to do that. First and foremost, weapons. An arms embargo is absolutely indispensable. The other thing is that the occupation that Israel maintains in Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem is unlawful. There is an advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice that has been followed up by the General Assembly resolution ordering Israel to dismantle the colonies, withdraw the troops, and stop exploiting Palestinian natural resources, among others, by September this year, by the 17th of September, and nothing is moving. So it's even shocking that member states are still discussing with Israel whether to make more aid come in or not. Israel, the only legal thing that can do is to move out of Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. Investigations are ongoing. There are genocide proceedings, at least 2 genocide proceedings, one initiated by South Africa against Israel and another initiated by Nicaragua versus Germany. And it's very, very important. The second also because it has ordered member states, it has reminded member states that of their obligation not to transfer weapons to states who might be committing violations of international humanitarian law, which means war crimes. You don't even need to bother the Genocide Convention. Israel is prima facie committing war crimes, and this has been confirmed in another judicial proceedings initiated, pending before the International Criminal Court. There are 2 arrest warrants against 2 leaders, 2 political leaders in Israel, including the current prime minister, for war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Gideon, feel free to come back on anything that Francesca was saying there, but I also want to ask you whether this report is going to change anything. Israel continues to insist that its army chooses targets meticulously and works tirelessly to minimize civilian casualties. How can it now justify the apparent indiscriminate nature of their attacks that the database shows all too clearly? Is there any embarrassment within the Israeli government and armed forces over the figures revealed by this database?
Fortunately not, definitely not. Not embarrassment, not shame, and not guilt. And not only the government, I must tell you, Adrian. The majority of the Israeli public opinion will either hardly hear about this report because the Israeli media, the mainstream media, is in one of its most shameful chapters in our history, covering up Gaza, not showing Gaza, and not reporting. You know, there were two most important human rights organizations, Israeli human rights organization, who came to the conclusion that there is a genocide in Gaza. Most of the media, Israeli media, didn't bother even to inform about this research, this horrible conclusion. So this report, like many before and many after, will unfortunately not change anything within Israel. The only hope is that the world will slowly, and it's horribly slowly, will move toward taking measures. We are still very far away. It took weeks for the same world to take measures against Russia after invading Crimea. It was very effective with the first apartheid state, South Africa. And when it comes to Israel, there are different rules, and the world is so slow. I understand that the International Court of Justice is still far from getting a resolution. By the time they'll get the resolution, I'm afraid nobody will be alive in Gaza. And that's the way the system works. Everyone is scared from Donald Trump, who punishes any resolution against Israel and take measures against those who dare to raise their voice or to take some measures against this genocide. I'm afraid, with all the frustration, that Israel will continue with the mass killing until there will be a critical hour which will be put on Israel, a critical pressure which will make it stop the killing without any other choice. But we are still very far from it.
Omar, again, feel free to come back on anything that Gideon and Francesca were saying, but I want to pick up on something that you were saying when we spoke a few moments ago. The database includes a list of 47,653 people whom the army considers to be active in the military wings of both Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The data says the army believes it's killed around 8,900, the vast majority of them at a junior level, with only 100 to 300 senior Hamas operatives killed. And yet more than 62,000 Gazans have died. What do you make of that?
Look, I mean, I think when you start investigating these strikes, and we've done this at Human Rights Watch, you realize that once we get beyond the numbers, you understand the incredibly significant human cost these strikes have taken. Let me tell you about one strike we documented on a residential building in the end of October 2023, in the early days of the hostilities. You had a strike hit when 50 kids were playing football, when dozens of people were charging their phones at a grocery store in this building, where dozens of displaced people were taking residence in this building. We investigated for weeks and we could not find any evidence of a military target or even the Israeli government claiming that there's a military target. And the reason why I want to bring up this one strike is I think we risk getting so focused on this debate about numbers that we really forget that civilian life in Gaza has been utterly devastated, right? The majority of schools, of homes, of hospitals, have been destroyed. And when we talk about these numbers from the Gaza Ministry of Health, they're likely a significant undercount. These numbers don't account for bodies who have gone missing, and there's thousands of those that are still in the rubble, including in this one strike that we investigated. But remember also that these numbers only include a very small percentage of non-combat related fatalities. So I'm talking about those that have died directly or indirectly from starvation. Today, the UN, declared a famine in the areas around Gaza City. The IPC, those that have died because of the systematic Israeli assault on healthcare facilities, dehydration, malnutrition, those have likely already been thousands, tens of thousands that have died indirectly. And those are not necessarily captured by this number. So the effect on the Gaza civilian population is incalculable. And as Gideon notes, right, there's no sign this is going to end. Even if, a ceasefire does come in the coming days, the lag effect in terms of the health on young children, on others, the effects over the coming weeks and months and years where people won't have quality health care as part of a deliberate Israeli policy, this means these numbers are likely only to multiply many-fold over. And the only answer, as Francesca notes, you need real, serious, immediate international action. Okay. Words are not enough to stop the extermination of Palestinians. Sanctions, arms embargo. What's critically necessary is suspending trade, political, economic deals with Israel. Much more dramatic action of the kind we have not seen.
Well, let's put that to Francesca. What pressure does the evidence in this database put on Israel's allies, especially the US, to reassess their support for Israel and its war on Gaza? And if the evidence is somehow ignored by Israel, as Gideon says it looks as though it's going to be, but especially by the US, what message does that send about accountability for future and indeed ongoing conflicts?
I've come to realize that this is such a turning point and defining moment in history. We will not get collectively as a global society. We will not get out of this genocide the same way, with the same pretense of innocence that we could display 2 years ago. The question you asked me, how this is going to impact and possibly change perception in the West, I think it won't. It won't, because it's not that there is anything that Western leaders in the US or in Australia, in Canada, in the European Union have not seen. The massacres. I mean, Gaza has become a meat grinder. Look at what's happening to children, and this is not enough, because there are other interests. There is ideological support for what Israel is doing. Do you remember at the height of the assault, Israeli assault against Iran, the German chancellor says, publicly, he said, Israel is doing the dirty jobs for all of us. So I think that there is this sense of relaxation toward international law and respect for the international rule of law that is leading all of us toward the abyss, toward a disaster. But like Gideon says, and I agree, there is an awakening, and this is the awakening of ordinary citizens. It's really slow, but it's happening, and I hope that it will accelerate, because the only hope is that we, the people, make it stop, meaning putting pressure on our respecting governments and on the United Nations as a whole to change course of action.
Mm-hmm. Many thanks indeed. We're going to have to end it there. Francesca Albanese, Gideon Levy, and Omar Shakir. Thanks for watching. You can see the program again at any time. It's on the website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, you can join us at our Facebook page. You'll find that at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can join the conversation on X. Our handle there at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the team here in Doha. We'll see you again. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Don't miss out and get full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.